Hi.
Hello.
You're wearing your Ringo birthday shirt.
Happy birthday, Ringo. We love you, right? Peace and love.
We're doing our own version of it, I guess.
It's noon. Beetle Candy, hello. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm pretty excellent too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought it was great that you're doing this, but I was, given our brief distant encounter with this, I was a little surprised, but hey, good for you.
I was totally surprised too, because I was just wanting to have creative company. And I thought, why don't I have a Zoom chat? And then it turned out, why don't I try a few more people? And then someone said, so what are you calling this thing? Thanks for having me on and all this stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it seemed technically difficult because you can't really change MP4s into MP3s very easily. But I realized DaVinci Resolve, where I do a little video editing if we need it, does it. So that made the whole thing very easy. And I just dumped them over there. And before you know it, they threw it on all the podcast sites. And someone said, you should call this something and we should do a podcast. I was like, okay. But what's fascinating is it's fantastic company for me. And it's all the things I'm interested in. So I think I'm the only one that's going to listen to them, but I'm really digging them.
Well, it happened so organically that it has this sort of, it had its own momentum. So you kind of had to go with it, right? It's like,
in a way, I mean, because I was thinking of the Julia Child movie where Meryl Streep plays her, and in Stanley Tucci's asking, well, what do you like to do? And she said, well, I like to eat, And
right.
when Oprah needed a job, they said, well, what do you like to do? She's like, well, I want to get paid to talk.
Right. Well, you see, I never had the nerve to answer that question the way I probably should have the many times I was asked it. So
what would you have answered?
I think that, I'm doing it now, but, I think that I was, I think I'm an artist, but I didn't realize that. And that part of me was not, cultivated. So so you said, like, what I like to talk to interesting people. I whatever it might be. It's like, that's the thing you should do. In fact, when I was a kid, my mother tells me that I used to say I wanted to host the Tonight Show.
There you go.
And I did, in fact, have a radio talk, not TV. Well, actually, I did do briefly TV too in Somerville Community Access. But
that's cool.
I had a radio show in New Hampshire for 8 years. So
really, which show was that?
It was a parenting show, and
wow.
I was diapering my son one day. This must have been 91, and I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, listening to. I don't know. Somehow it just hit me that, like, radio would be a great medium for parent education and parenting stuff. So I proposed it to the local station, and we said, we can find a sponsor, we'll do it. And we did find a sponsor, Frisbee Memorial Hospital up in Rochester, New Hampshire.
Wow.
We did for 8 years. It was great. It was great fun. But yeah,
it's amazing.
Communicating, talking to people, good conversation. I mean, that's the stuff of life,
Absolutely. And how cool you did it for 7-8 years. That's amazing.
But the flip side of this is you're a person who doesn't like small talk. And so that kind of makes you weird in certain kinds of workplaces and, milieus where you're supposed to just smile and talk about nonsense.
I'm not good at that.
I'm not either. Not only am I not good at it, but I feel I have a principled objection to it. It's like a waste of time, I have had some conventional job situations, and I'm remembering particularly, like, I worked at this not-for-profit in New Hampshire. It was doing good work, but it was like, we would we'd leave 6 o'clock. I'd be back the next morning at 9. Like, you just saw me. So, like, how was your evening? How are you? It's like, you just saw me. and it just, I understand it's, like, nice and it creates cohesion and all that. But on the other hand, it was like, why are we doing this? We have to, like, write grants. Like, let's get to it.
Well, I had seen that movie Pump Up the Volume when it came out. And parts of it were really fun, but the idea just hit me then. It was like, I would like to be a radio DJ. So I did that at WUMB for a little while. So I do
It's
have
so
my
much
radio
fun.
license. Yeah.
It's so much fun. I mean, when I would have I would interview, after a while, it kind of morphed into sort of a general interest talk show. But, I had, nobody would refuse to come, like, it was mostly like local experts, professors, but sometimes we do call-ins with different, people. And, but it was a great, it's such a buzz, like to interview people and have a great interview that, adds value to the world, like not just two people like bullshitting, but like, although, who's to say? I mean, sometimes two people bullshitting does have enormous value. Like, I mean, it's been award-winning movies based on that. Anyway.
And it's funny sometimes, yeah.
But yeah, and I think that the art of conversation is we are losing it in the next generation. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old person, but I am. And yeah, it's because of the phone, but also I think it's also because of just the culture of busyness and the way the demands of modern life, that people just feel really stressed. And to like chat, and again, this may contradict my aversion to small talk, but there is value in connecting with people, to just keep the reservoir full, like just maintain that thing. And I think that, or even to have, sort of meandering conversations, just conjecturing on the world or talking about, just different, like there's no time for that. You know what I mean? There's just no time for it.
Yeah. How did we first, do you remember what year it was and what article it was that I read of yours that I had to write you?
I absolutely do remember.
You do?
You want me to review that?
Yes.
What level of detail do you want? I can tell you exactly. It's also, I mean, I would have been able to do this had I not been recently thinking, being reflective on my past. But yes, it was 1990. I want to say 8 or 9. Oh, if you read the article, so then it was 1999. I had gone to Liverpool and wrote an essay about it in the Boston Globe that was published in the Boston Globe travel section.
Wow.
And as a result of that, and this was before it was easy to find, well, it was early days of the internet, but like people found me and like wrote me letters like, oh, that's so great. You're so lucky. I loved your piece. Or, they would say that they had a similar kind of, experience, or people would say, oh, I'm looking for, it was just very, and so that's when I realized like, you're not the only person who still likes the Beatles, so
well, it was very lonely in those days. There weren't that many people that spoke of them very highly or spoke of them enough. They certainly weren't around me.
Right. I mean, it was it was a long time ago. But it's sort of how we met.
How did my letter differ?
I don't know that I'm not remembering you writing to me, but I am remembering
I emailed you
about your band.
I emailed you, yeah.
Oh, okay. You were your band Get Back at that time.
Yeah.
And I can remember taking my son to see you play, I want to say Stratham Park.
Probably one of those Stratham fairs.
Or Alton Bay up in Alton, New Hampshire on Lake Winnipesaukee.
Right. We played a lot of those places.
Yeah. And and we connected there. And, my book at that time was I wouldn't say it wasn't even a glimmer in my eye, but it wasn't on an active burner at that moment. But I've been reading my journals, like during the pandemic, I reread my journals, and I was talking about my Beatles book in 1997.
Nice.
It didn't come out till 2014. So, but so we met then, and I guess I don't know. I must have been doing some writing then because, I know what it was. I wrote an article about tribute bands. I bet that's what it was.
What were in that? I don't remember that.
It was in it. There was an exhibit. Linda McCartney's photos were exhibited in Manchester, and around the same time, there was a Beatles, maybe it was your band and other tribute bands. And I did an article, it was in the Portsmouth Herald
Oh, wow.
on, and they did a tie-in with the Linda McCartney exhibit in Manchester. So it might have been that I wanted to talk to you about tribute bands.
Well, I remember emailing you about that article in '99 because up until that point, I didn't have that many people in my life that were talking about the Beatles. And, they broke up in 1970. I was 10 years old. I did not have the vocabulary to explain the depth of how important they were to me. And there was something about the way you started that article and how we watched A Hard Day's Night and how we all had to tune into that dialect of their accents and all the things that you were saying. You had so many beautiful ways of explaining how they nurtured us, how they enchanted us, how their magic affected us. And I was like, oh my God, this is all the stuff I've always wanted to be able to say and explain because I missed them so much. And I felt like you understood that. And I thought, I've got to talk to this person.
Well, thank you so much, because I'm sure I thanked you at the time and since, but like hearing that, like at this moment, like the latest moment of ever right now, right in this now, hearing you say that again is very, I really appreciate that. I think that I was, as I said, I started to write this book. I first thought about writing a book about the Beatles in '97. And, and I thought, well, surely somebody must have. And there was really no books about the fans, and then I just found Mark Catone's book. I don't know if it's called As I Write This Letter, was the only fan book that was out there. But because of as I describe it, the intersection of my biography and history and temperament and my parents and the world in Flushing, New York. And like, I felt that I had a real deep understanding of this. Like I saw this thing,
Wow.
what I call my sociological imagination, which is a term from C. Wright Mills, but I had that, at 7. And I just saw this thing, and I knew that this was something different. This was extraordinary. And but I was talking about how I came to write. Well, I was surprised that there had been no books about the fans, that. And then when I ended my marriage, I moved, a lot of things were happening in my life, but at every juncture when I would like revisit writing this book, because it never left me, like, it was going to happen. It had to, because again, like I would check no books about the fans, no books about how could this be? And, looking at it again, as a sociologist and as a sort of, you think about like who writes about the Beatles and it sort of made sense sort of that no one had, but like, it was not a good thing that no one had because they were, and also the whole changed everything. This was the other thing, the what I call politics. And I don't mean politics in the sense of like revolution. I'm talking politics in the sense of how they shifted people's perceptions of things and the power structure in some ways, that how they empowered young people and all this, that's political to me. And so that aspect of it and how that, their role as a catalyst and agent of change in the 60s was like, nobody was really talking about this. And
it was huge. It was huge because it had never happened before. And because of that, it hasn't changed. The world still thinks it's all about the young. But up until that point, it was all about white guys in crew cuts.
Right. I think we take
for the hit.
Yeah, it was a completely different world. And I felt that, I think that people weren't talking about it because even if you stop and think, like the whole idea of like, for a pop group, changing the course of history, like, well, that's fucking ridiculous. No academic is going to make that claim, right? No serious journalist is going to make that claim.
Not on their own, no.
It sort of took somebody like me, and anyway, so that was my goal, was to really kind of, and the other thing too, like I was, I have a master's degree in child development, so like I have all this that informs how I saw it, when I sat down to write and really look at, and also I
Wow.
have a PhD in sociology. So I would be reading, my, one of the areas that I studied in sociology was, social change, culture change, and, like gender, a bunch of things, but also like how things change, and historical sociology and all this stuff. And I would read these different theories or articles, and I was like, oh, that's kind of explains the Beatles, or oh, that can be applied to Beatlemania. And it's like it was just there, it was just
Oh,
there.
that's so cool.
And so then I moved to, as I said, it never left me. I moved to Massachusetts from New Hampshire in 2006. And, I was doing some other work. I was doing market research work, running focus groups for big pharma. And I feel like I've atoned, so I don't want to even talk about all that. Um,
Let's
and
talk
then
about your writing. Talk about the actual writing. How often did you sit down when you decided to write the book? Was there any kind of writing schedule?
pure torture,
Torture,
torture and
but
procrastination.
it's one of your favorite subjects. What could be so torturous about writing about the Beatles?
Because like why do writers find it torturous? Either perfectionism, procrastination, but I was doing interviews, right? So I had to do, I was doing a lot of interviews, which was really fun. I enjoyed those a lot. And some of them were really long, I would
Yeah.
and I would transcribe them. And then I was sort of, some of the paragraphs and chunks in the book actually go back to 1999,
Nice.
because I had started doing all this writing about, fandom, how fandom is sort of looked down upon. That was the other thing I wanted to address, like this kind of dissing of fandom. Like nobody says anything when men travel across the country to a ball game or, to a sporting event, but like, for what, and again, this was 99. So the culture, everything around all this has changed so much. But anyway, so I wanted to kind of redeem fandom as a thing, it's a hobby, it's a leisure activity, like gardening or whatever. If something brings you joy, like who, it's like what's acceptable needs to broaden, like what people do in their lives and what brings them joy needs to, if it doesn't harm anybody else, needs to be broadened. I mean, we're still seeing this now and how difficult that is, right? I'm meandering all over the place. So you asked me about the writing process. When I got into a flow state, when I found the words, it was great. And it just felt so right, and, I integrated the interview material, and so when I wanted to find quotes to illustrate the point I was going to make, and, found them, and I set up this, using search and Word, and made keyword, all this kind of stuff. And, so it was very satisfying.
What helps you get into that flow state?
Well, that's a very good question. I ask myself that every morning. I actually been finding it very difficult to write for like years. Like the paperback of Beatleness came out in 2016, and I had planned to write another book that was looking at some of the sort of growing up with pop culture as a girl, at that time and place, and related issues. And with the election of Trump, like it shifted something for me that was really very extreme and hard to get past. And it's not happened yet. However, I'm dealing with it better. So I said, well, how can I write about this? Like, it didn't seem important anymore. I don't know. And then I did write a few articles. I wrote some Beatles related work, like academic stuff. And I wrote, but I wasn't really writing, and it was torturous. But what changed recently, like this is, like I'll tell the solution to the problem. Yoga And I am shocked by it because I tried yoga for many, many years. I hated it. It was boring. Yes, I just could not get into it. And then in February, just this past February, I don't know what made, there was a course online and this locally, it's offered locally, but done online. And I did it and I liked it and I kept doing it. And it's helped me to write, but there's an in-between piece here, which is that the reason I felt suddenly so motivated to write was because all these memories that sometimes come to me for no apparent reason were coming to me during yoga, but they were coming in a different way and inviting me to look at them. Okay.
That makes sense because they say a lot of memories and feelings.
Absolutely, it's in the body,
Yes, in the
Now,
muscles.
these memories are extra, I mean, we can't put labels on people's trauma, but some of them are kind of just sort of benign, like, why am I, like not a big deal. Some of them are quite unpleasant and some of them are profoundly unpleasant, but none of them are actually new. That's the interesting thing, that there are things that, that cross my mind for one reason or another. Although that said, since this has happened, I feel like my memory is more fluid, that I have access to more things.
That's great. So basically what you were describing was your own alignment. You found a way to get back to yourself. And then as you relaxed, all these things came out, memories, thoughts, feelings about things, ways of putting things into words that you could describe how it fits all the things you're interested in. And you thought, okay, time to start writing again, because this needs to go somewhere.
Well, it was time to really, in a sense, it was like an unblocking. Like I need to turn, like a lot of these memories are now like essays. I'm working on.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
Word essays that kind of deal. I mean, I don't know if anybody will ever read them, but I'm getting them out, and in so doing, experiencing those moments of finding that right word, or I don't know, this sentence, every time I read it back, I keep tripping up on it. Why does that happen? And so I go back and it's like you want to, I think of it like this. Okay, imagine a pine dresser, okay, unfinished pine dresser, and it's a little rough on the top, okay, and you have a piece of silk, okay, and it snags here and there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Snags. So you want to go back and look at that. Is it a piece of dust? Is it whatever it is? It needs to be sand. It needs to be fixed. It's smooth, like frictionless, I guess, really what I'm
That's a
talking
perfect metaphor for it, because lines, whether they're poems or in an article or a book or a lyric, they have to have a flow of their own. They have a music to them and a rhythm. And when you get stuck on something, that's your own frame of reference saying, I can do better than this. There's something else here. So are you a writer that accesses a thesaurus or a rhyming dictionary if you need it?
I'll show you what I use, and this is
it's right here. It's right under me fingertips.
when my mother died and I was cleaning out their apartment. I found this wonderful book, The Synonym Finder. It's
fantastic.
I love it because it's also text, it's the texture of it. It's big, it's heavy. I just love it.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say that I am now, if I'm really into it, sometimes I'll just use the thesaurus thing in Word.
Online and stuff too.
Or sometimes I'll go in and want to read a little bit of the etymology. Like it has to be the right word,
Oh, yeah. And you know it when you hear it. I don't know what that is. I know Pat Metheny has said, we write a song and then we end up writing the same song our whole lives with every subsequent song. And it almost seems like we've all been here before, but we forget that we were doing this writing thing. And so then we're listening and waiting for that idea to come. And as soon as you hear it, you go, yeah, that's it. It's like, because you recognize it from your past life and you're just rewriting the same songs in every life or the same articles.
Well, that makes sense, because what is it? It's about self-expression, right? The circumstances of your life might have changed, or what Eckhart Tolle would say, your life situation may change, but your expression of yourself there's a continuity to it. Like there's some piece of you, there's some intelligence of you that's been there all along, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're accessing, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's your spirit and it's infinite intelligence, and it's that whole energetic, wonderful thing that makes writing so exciting. Because when you are in that, it's like the best feeling in the world, because it is your natural self.
Yeah,
It
it's
is the
really
energy
great.
of life.
It's yeah, it's extremely satisfying to like find that word and save the paragraph. But as I was saying, I was having a really hard time trying to write. And when I was experiencing this, like wanting to write but not being able to, and just like, putting myself down for procrastination and blah blah blah. What I was quilting at the time, I was making a quilt.
Nice.
And it was a little story about creativity in that too. But anyway, but I was talking to my therapist. I said, like, about why I can't write. She says, well, what do you want to do instead? I just want to quilt. I want to sew all day. She said, well, then sew all day.
Exactly.
Experiment. Don't think about writing for 2 weeks and just sew, and I did that. And then it went quite beyond 2 weeks, but I made this amazing quilt. And I discovered, I actually dismantled a quilt I had made 20 years ago that I've been using and rolled it into this new quilt. But it's not like the other one was like a conventional sort of very geometric kind of quilt. I discovered something called improv quilting.
Nice.
And this is it. Like I was doing, like and this gets back to the permission around all of this. Okay.
Yes, that's a big one.
It's like, a quilt, I started, I had dismantled this quilt literally with a seam ripper. Like some of it I tossed, but because I still like the palette and all that. So and so I'm thinking, well, I start taking out the graph paper. What is the new one? I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to sew. And so, of course, YouTube, where you can learn how to do anything, right?
I love that about YouTube. Yeah.
I discovered there's a thing called improv quilting, and like, yes, that's it, right? So I made this amazing quilt, and then I, building the skill, one thing leads to another, and so it's then I started to learn about free motion quilting, which is really hard to do. But one of the introductory things that you do when you want to learn that is called the meander. Okay, it's called the meander pattern.
Perfect.
Okay. So here I am, improv quilting, free motion quilting, meander. What is the theme here? And it's like exploration, exploring patterns, exploring movement, and not being confined by the rules of this thing.
Love it. That's perfect.
Right. So I started this quilt, but what I realized in this is that it's not about writing versus quilting or gardening, which I also consider to be an extremely creative thing. It's about if you have a creative impulse, like it's going to come out one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. It should, in a healthy situation, it should, like, again, it gets to permission. Like, for most of my life, these types of activities that were, I wasn't encouraged to be a creative person in that way. And, but it's even with, I realized with the quilting, it was like writing and improv quilting is like, I made the quilt I made is based on 6-inch squares, but when you look at it, you don't really see the squares,
Oh, cool.
So,
do you have it there? You want to show it to us?
I could get a picture of it up in a moment.
Okay.
What was I going to say?
The 6-inch squares.
No, it's like, I realized it was like writing in that.
Absolutely.
Like I would walk around and in the periods where I was really struggling with writing, I would come up with all these great lines of start pieces. I might even dictate it into my phone, whatever, but I would never do it. I kept this like, I just have to know what I'm going to say, but I don't have to know what I'm going to say. And and doing the quilting freed me to remember that I don't have to sit down and know what I'm going to say. Now, this sounds really like dumb and basic, but I don't know. It's like when I take, I mean, there's a palette. Okay, so there's a defined color palette. So it's not like but I don't know what that square is going to look like when it's done.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
It's
No,
going to look like it's supposed to look, I guess.
absolutely. And that's the whole idea is as artists, we need that sort of, what is the form going to be, so then I can fill it. And we're not sure what it is yet. So exploration was exactly the perfect word, because you have to give yourself permission to dig around and look for the nuggets and save all those wonderful things. Like James Taylor has little ideas all over the place, and then eventually starts putting them in one notebook per song. And he makes little recordings, and he would pull out his little tape recorder and play us these different little moments of songs that weren't used yet. And then, even though he's creatively coming up with all these bits, there is a day where he just sits down and goes, well, I don't feel any new things coming, but do any of these things fit together? And he starts making a quilt of all these song ideas, so.
And that's because you created it. I mean, obviously, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find a way to connect them, but they're both products of you, right?
I think the intention is good. I mean, as long as you say, I will finish this someday, or I'm looking forward to finishing this, your brain will find a way, whether it's tomorrow or 17 years from now. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the decision and the intent and the self-respect. Like, I think that's one of the reasons I'm so crazy about Paul McCartney, is that he gives himself so much permission, and people admire him for that, and they want to take him down for that. But it's exactly what an artist needs, is
Yeah.
this complete freedom to do whatever, whenever, and turn it into something if you desire, but not to stop. The whole idea is to keep going, because that is life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've probably read or are familiar with Rick Rubin's book.
Yes, I loved that book. It was quite good.
I loved it too. I bought it for my grandson. I mean, I thought I had the same response to that book as I had to, like, when I read The Power of Now, which is like, okay, this all makes sense to me, but like, I was never really allowed to talk about this, like.
Right. And who are you going to talk about it with? That's why I want these conversations.
But I think what's great about his book is that it's how he puts it in the context of life, of just being creative, and not only in like making art, but also just as a way of cultivating your humanity and your growth as a person.
Love it. Yeah.
Really important.
Did you read Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg?
I did twice.
Oh yeah, 2-3
Twice
times.
within the past year and a half.
I mean, another year and a half. Oh, that's great, because that's the whole idea, is give yourself permission to write the worst junk in America and just let your pen keep moving. So what kind of things do you do? Do you ever do any free association or object writing to just get the pumped up and have something accidentally pop out that you could use?
I actually don't, and I should. People talk, the daily practice.
Well, it's like saying you should be weeding or you should be quilting. It's like, you do what you feel like doing when you feel like doing it. That's the magic too. Follow the energy.
But I do. I can talk myself into justifying anything.
So can anybody, pretty much.
Right, but I have to watch it, because okay, how will I feel at the end of the day? Will I have what will make me feel better? Because
that's the question to ask in the moment, of what will make me feel the best right now.
Right. And
that's like Abraham Hicks thinking.
Right, because that's going to allow me to move forward.
Exactly. And it's also going to help your alignment, and it's going to help you move up the emotional scale, so that if there is something bothering you, you can stop focusing on it and making it bigger, and start to focus on something that matters in the moment, that's giving you pleasure. And you can actually make that maybe even into a finished article, or a new blog post, or a new song, or whatever it is you're creating, and that is the thrill then, is that discovery and making something out of nothing, and then realizing, I'm not such a schmuck after all. Hey.
Right. Yeah, that I'm not such a schmuck after all moment is really great. Like the other day,
that's your true self. That's that uninhibited, complete spirit, whole self. When you feel your best is when you're doing your best human thing. And
Yeah.
everything else is diminishing from that. So the whole thing is to work towards staying there. And nobody can stay there. It's just variety of energies throughout the day. But the whole point is be your best self, right? So that's why it makes sense with what Rick Rubin was saying, as well as what an artist needs.
Right. But in the thinking about this, I mean, then there's the issue of, you get that wonderful feeling. But if, then there's a question of, well, do I want to share this? Like, and then so, which brings it, to a whole other level. But I think by the time, I don't know, it seems to me by the time you're willing to do that, I mean, it feels a little risky, whatever. But I think by the time you're willing to do that, you kind of know in your gut that it's like ready for a trusted insider to have a look or a read,
Sure. And,
But how do you know when that, I think, how do you know though, if it's the right person and when that time comes though, that can be true, right?
well, it's like find what you love and share it, or how Arnold Schwarzenegger will say, be great at something and tell people about it. It's like, really, I don't care what anybody thinks about my music and my songs. I really don't. It feels fantastic when someone likes something or they say it lands with them. I would definitely be like James Taylor, who says it still matters to him very much that people really love his music. But I haven't had that situation where masses of people have been exposed to my music. And I have struggled with that for so many decades, and how different things like that can hurt, because you think, but I like what I'm doing and I feel like it's good and people could or should be listening to this. They're not going to listen to anything they don't know is there. It has to be advertised. And I don't particularly like advertising that much. It's like, if I could just be on every big TV show, everybody would hear about me. But I have to do all the work too. So I'd rather do the creative stuff. And for me, I'm putting all my favorite sounds, all my favorite words, all my favorite vocals or background percussion or whatever it is. It's like I'm just putting all my favorite stuff into a song and watching it bounce off into the world and have some fun. And it's not about people liking it for me. It's about making more, because I enjoy making it.
Right. Yeah, yes. I mean,
so then how did you ever get published? How did you know, okay, I'm going to take this first piece of writing and I'm going to approach a newspaper or
you're talking about you're talking about like what's like the
when you first started professionally writing? I mean, you got articles published first before you started writing books, no?
Yeah, you just send, you send stuff out, and sometimes, like the Globe, I had no, actually, I take that back. I did have in New Hampshire, I did have some clips. I had a column in a local paper. I was writing a bunch of stuff, which I had completely forgotten about till just now. Used to write about things, different things. If you can get enough clips, I mean, certainly a publisher wants to see, what else you've written. But I didn't I didn't really have a whole lot. I had maybe a handful of publications before my book. Even like going back to, like, I had something in a sociology journal in the 80s, but but I didn't, I had done different kinds of writing. Like I was working for a child abuse prevention organization in New Hampshire. So I produced a big report, I did doing all kinds of, but when it was time to write the book, which I knew was, it had to be in the world by 2014, because after all these years, I want to be part of that 50th anniversary conversation. And if I'm not,
cool.
I will regret it for the rest of my life. I mean, the fact that
ahead to that,
it was like imagining that regret was really a huge motivator. Seriously. It was like to preempt that regret, which is not
but
bad.
it's also, it's a fine tuning of what you actually want. You could look at it as a negative, like, well, that really pushed me to get it done. But the whole point was you focused on what would be the benefit of this. It would be a big benefit and I would be disappointed without it. So that was more of the pain body there. You decided to do.
Exactly. I had to do it also because there was still no book there was still no book that did what I did. Okay. And I conclude it's because it was for me to write it. Like nobody else could have done that.
That's true. Well, that's, That's why it's so important for every person on the planet to use their creative abilities. And we all do. We don't necessarily make art or paintings or music or write books, but we all have this creative thing. And you're using it all the time. So the more aware of it you can become, the more pleasure you can have in your time on Earth, and the more you have to share. You know, like, share your best stuff, share your best energy.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen when the book came out. I didn't know how it would be received. And I still frankly feel it has not gotten the attention it deserves. But I mean, what author doesn't feel that way? So, and my publisher has not been as supportive as ideally they would have been. But hey, they published it, and it's out in the world, and I'm very proud of it. And I would like to write another book. Well, now that I don't know if I found my voice, because I think it wasn't that I lost my voice. I just feel like, no, I just did not feel like I wanted to write. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but yoga and transformational.
Quilting and gardening are equal, cooking, anything.
Yes. Yeah.
And don't you remember in Natalie's book where she was talking about having all this stress about trying to meditate properly, and her teacher was saying, just do walking meditation, just do writing meditation, like, do your thing. It becomes a meditation because it aligns you. It gets you back in touch with your true self, which is your spirit, which is unhindered, unhindered.
Right. And is not concerned with judgment
and doesn't judge you. Like, if you're hearing voices, because we all have airwaves picking up, we're all antenna, and we pick up on energy and we pick up on thoughts. And sometimes a thought comes by that's not very conducive to a healthy life or to making you feel good, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from your brain. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a message from on high where you should be paying attention to it. If anything is coming from on high, whatever you want to describe that as, it's always uplifting and always loving and always putting you in the best possible light.
Right. Right.
And if it's negative, it's an old memory or part of the trauma or a pain in a muscle that reminds you of something. Like, just recently, in one of the winter coats I was in over a cold day in the supermarket, I realized I had tied my wrist closings on my winter coat too tight. And instantly in the checkout line, I freaked and almost broke out in a sweat, because I can remember being grabbed by the wrist and yanked around as a child. And like, you're following us, or you're coming now, and you're going, like, there was no choice. And I just thought, oh my God, like you said, it remains in your body, And so it's so important to be gentle with yourself, especially as an artist. We have been beaten up as human beings enough. Yeah. Do not beat yourself up. Do not keep the entertainment of self-bashing, because it just makes you feel worse, and nothing good comes of it,
Yeah, the negative self. I mean, I've gotten better with that, but it has kept me back. It still does at times, and it keeps.
That's a thought. That's a thought. So if you start listening to Brooke Castillo or Dana Wilde or any of those folks, everything is brain training. Or even Jerry Seinfeld, right? He talks about the horse being like a wild stallion, and you have to contain it. You have to train it. And Brooke Castillo says the brain is like a 3-year-old running around with scissors, So when you have a thought like that, how can you turn it around? You're a writer. You could just change it.
Right. It's
practice.
It's practice, and it's
exhausting. And it's like Jim Carrey says, you got to tune yourself like a guitar. You got to tune yourself thousands and thousands of times a day, because
it's exhausting. But
it is. But it's necessary.
It does get easier, and this sort of related to that is stressful circumstances become opportunities to do it differently and see it differently, and
make something better, make it your own way.
But I think a lot of people, a lot of adults especially, are it's like, you're not an artist, you're not creative. In other words, people, this idea of like, well, some people are creative and some people aren't. I don't believe that. No. I think that's kind of unfair. And I think it says more about our culture than it does about anybody's particular talent or temperament,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think everybody is. And if they could see themselves that way and allow themselves to explore and find the things that make them the happiest, they will find that they're living in that more often than in the chaos of their own mind, you know?
But people don't, again, it gets back to this permission thing. It's like
Yes.
people feel they don't have permission, either because they have demands of people that are dependent on them, or because they have to earn money, or because for whatever reason. And it's not good, you know. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's a kind of it's something you do for yourself, to allow yourself to, you know, to commit to doing the thing, you know. Like when I did the, okay, I'm not going to write for 2 weeks, I'm just going to focus on quilting. One of the things that was interesting is like all the little, like, it's like I found myself, you know, buying that tool that, well, maybe I don't, you know, I talked myself out of, oh, I don't really need that. Well, it did make it more pleasant, you know.
Sure. The right
Or
tool for the job, as my dad would say.
or I, you know, it's, you know, this is when I used to wallpaper, like I used to hate stopping to change the blade, but you have to, or else it's going to look like shit, right? Same thing like with the quilting. It's like, you know, in other words, I respected time and energy and focus I was putting in. I was respecting it more and allowing it to have the tools that it needed, you know, like,
I love to hear you say that. That's great.
you know, like change the blade, like, you know, you need more, order more, you know. It's like,
Yes, use it up. It's for now. As my friend Kate Chadbourne always says, everything is for now. And people will say, well, you need this. You don't really need that. Or why don't you get rid of that? You haven't opened that box in 20 years, like this puzzle. I started this puzzle at the beginning of the pandemic. And I just worked on it here and there because I was so excited to be teaching from home that I was just hanging out in my studio here, writing songs and recording as many things as I could, because it was like, woohoo, I'm home. This is lovely. And I had that puzzle from a Beatlefest catalog, at least 25 years, in an unopened, sealed box in a closet. And somebody would have easily said, oh my God, you're never going to put that puzzle together, you know. And yet the time came and I thought, it's time. And now it's so exciting because it's framed and it's beautiful. And it was hard to do because it only looks good far away. Close up, it's all very blurry. And they took a beautiful color photograph and made it black and white. This is the photograph of the inside of Magical Mystery Tour booklet. And they're all wearing their colorful clothes. And it was fun to do. But for the longest time, I had so many parts happening and no features, no facial features. And I thought, how could I have so many pieces together and yet I don't see anybody's face? I know the four of them are standing here, you know? So it's all that patience and the whole thing about life and all the creating that we're all doing. It's all a puzzle. You know,
yeah,
if I had never seen the box top, I wouldn't know what I was going after. And for all the songs I write or the articles that you start, or when you say you just start with a little idea, there's no box top to say what you're even creating. You letting it and you're giving yourself permission and following the interest and the curiosity to turn it into something. What could this be? And,
yeah.
you know, a couple of years ago, I was trying to develop various courses to teach.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I'll buy the camera equipment and the lights and whatever I need. Let's see if that's, you know, something, because I was asked to do these things and it kept getting put off, put off, put off. And I thought, well, I like talking. I'm going to talk to some creative people, you know, and then all of a sudden, like you said, this thing just took off. I don't even know how. For the longest time, I didn't even expect it to be this. I had no desire to say, I'm going to start a podcast. You know, it
But there
didn't
was,
even
it just,
occur to me.
it happened, it unfolded. It's like there was no struggle or work around it, right? It just,
Somebody called me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's wonderful when that happens, because you know that it's supposed to be there, right? It's supposed to be.
Well, for now, it's a pretty good. I'm not going to argue, you know, but it's, you know, it's fun. So what about like a writing nook or a favorite pen, or do you write on a laptop?
I do write on a laptop.
Really? Not a fountain pen and paper
Well,
and
no, I do have, I am
typewriter and
got my pen. I use a Pilot Gel .38, which is a super fine point. I
wow.
write in my journal with, like, when I write on, like, I have legal pads all over the house.
Yeah.
You want my technique, I'll tell you. It's like legal pads all over the house, Post-it notes. And
Nice.
every once in a while, it gets a little out of, I feel like it's getting away from me. So I put them all together, keep or
Corral
talk.
them.
If it's a keep, I sometimes create a file or add it to an existing file that's thematically consistent. So I put all that stuff together, but if I'm really writing, I do tend to, at this point, I'm writing on the computer in Word.
You
But
haven't used Scrivener?
I haven't. People have recommended it.
Yeah, I like that.
I also want to not add any tech to my life that is truly not wonderful, because like there's too much tech in my life, and I believe there's too much tech in everybody's life. Another thing you're not allowed to say.
Well, yeah, I can remember my mom said, I don't want a microwave. I am against it. I do not want a microwave. And I don't need a dishwasher. And I don't need a da 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 da. And, we'd all still be in the horse and buggy probably without it.
Everybody draws the line where they draw the line. But a number of people have recommended that program to me. So
But you don't have to compile your own books, I guess. You've got a publisher. They're doing all that for you.
well, I mean, what I'm talking about now is writing sort of essays and this stuff I've been working on lately, which I'm not sure what it's going to be. But as far as another book, I mean, you have to, if I'm going to go with the publisher, then I would have to submit it to them in Word docs, which is, sort of the standard. But I do, if I'm sketching out a night, in fact, even for this, okay, the brief correspondence we had setting this up, right? I'm thinking, okay, I sort of had a vague sense of what you were doing. And then I actually went and did a little research, and I listened to bits of the other ones you did, all, truth here. And so when I was making notes about what I might want to talk about or what would come up, I did it with my 0.38 on a legal pad, because it's that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Now, if there's enough here, which there actually kind of is, perhaps, for a piece about creativity, then I would take this to the computer and,
Yes.
save it in a file.
Yes. I have a big notebook, and I just do all kinds of free association in it, and playing with words or sentences or bad rhyme after sentence after crazy sentence with bad rhymes, and just let myself go with all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, like all on the right side pages, fill the whole book if you want to keep going. But then every once in a while on the left side, I'll pick up my guitar if I have an idea already, and I'll flip through the book and look for anything interesting and start writing a lyric on that side. And it gets as messy and as thought all over the place as you just showed on your legal pad. And then at some point, when there's a couple of verses and maybe a chorus, I go to the laptop and then start writing the actual lyric.
Messy to handle anymore. Like this is why
yes, you can't make sense out of it.
You can get really tiny, but yeah, after a while, okay, things here that need to, be salvaged. Yeah, it's a gathering it's like a
yes. And what's here, and what have I said so far, and what do I need to say to continue this thought? And okay, I have 2 verses, so maybe one more verse and a bridge. Okay, let me write another section of chords for the chorus, and I'll just write a bridge. Oh, look at this, we're done. Oh no, it needs a title. Wait, and I'll flip through the book and find something interesting and find a title. And sometimes they just come to you. A whole idea for a song, or a whole.
Do you get lyrics first or music first?
For the longest time, because I was always playing guitar, I got guitar chords and stuff first, or a riff. But recently I was listening to some Sheryl Crow, and she had a really cool tempo. I think it was about 110 beats per minute. And I just loved the groove. And I thought, let me set that on my metronome. And I was writing some words, and I just said, let's face it, very little makes sense. It's all a game. It's all made up. It's all this, it's all that. And I did a whole giant rant kind of life, and how strange it is, and how weird we are, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was eventually called Make Something Better, but it instead of just finding chords and grabbing the guitar right away, I just kept the metronome on, opened up a little version of, the DAW that you can record into called Logic. And I just started a cappella singing to a click, because I wanted that tempo. And I wrote a melody without any music around it.
Wow.
and sang the whole thing once I realized this is the order of this rant that I want to put it in. And then I wrote the music afterwards. And I've never written a song that way, but I think this creative process is so interesting. I'm always trying to get into it from another way. Because the first time it happened, I was 10 years old and I just thought, what was that? That was the coolest thing ever. Will it ever happen again? And I'm always trying to find ways to make it happen more. And when I hear of Peter Gabriel writes this way, or Carly Simon did it like that, or Pat Metheny tried this, and Paul Simon was doing this, and George Harrison did that. And like the whole trick with George Harrison, open up a book and the first two words you see, write a song, and he sees the words gently weeps. It's like these little things make it playful and they help you just get away from yourself, which is filled with all these have tos and shoulds. And this is a problem. And my teacher said this and my mother said that. And it's got nothing to do with any of that. It's just go have fun and play with words, play with chords, play with articles, play with words, play with your garden, play with your quilt. Just be free and freaking make yourself happy and go do your thing.
Why? But here's the thing. Yes, I agree. But why is it so hard?
Because we keep saying it's so hard. If we started to say, you know what? I'm going to find my way out of this hole. Half of it is your brain saying, see, there's this thing called the RAS, the reticular activating system that brain trainers will tell you about. And your brain is always filtering out all this crud and giving you just the things you need in this moment. So I don't know my heart rate. I don't know how hot I feel, what the temperature actually is. I don't know my circulatory system or what's happening on CNN right now. I don't have to know all the things that are happening because there's too much. Your brain knows that, so it filters it out. But as soon as you say, I want to find the right quilting needle, or I got to find a pattern that'll help me mesh this new thing over on this side of the quilt, your brain says, okay, fine. And it goes and looks for it. And that's why you get the aha moment somewhere where you're walking down the street and you see this piece of material in the window and you go, I got to get into that shop and buy that. Here's the thing I was looking for, because your brain is still helping you find it. You got to set yourself a task. You got to let your brain go after what you want rather than you feel crappy. You definitely feel crappy. You're going to stay feeling crappy.
Off the default. You just like don't listen to it or get out of it.
Well, how about that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? Where they say we all fall into a hole. We have like grooves in our brain and they're very comfortable. That's how I am. This is where
well, that's how you die.
How my mother made me.
You can't live that way because you stop growing. I mean, that's the other thing. You have to, even within a creative practice of some kind, you have to change it up sometime because otherwise it gets stale. And like I'm left-handed, and sometimes like I'm a big doodler too. Like if I'm listening to podcasts and some of them are actually quite nice, and they're cool on my refrigerator, but maybe someday I'll do something with them. But anyway, so sometimes I doodle with my right hand, and it's completely different,
That's fun.
But I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but like you were saying before about like, the music come first or words come first, or where do you, in other words, if you try different ways of doing something, you never know how.
Because if I pick up an acoustic guitar, very often it's going to come out sounding like a James Taylor kind of thing. It's going to be nice and easy and mellow. And I came up with a little riff one day and I went, this is cool, but what can I do with it? And I thought, let me cue up a little groove somewhere, and brought up the rhythm program on the computer and just quickly made a groove. And I purposefully played the riff so that the fill wasn't where you expected the drum fill. And that turned out to be the song I use for the podcast now. This is a song of mine called Night Vision. And it was just a tiny little thing that sounded like a James Taylor tune that I thought I could write words and make a nice little song out of this. But I thought, why don't I make it an instrumental and make it a little bit more driving? How can I get it more driving? It's like, well, up the tempo a little bit. Again, trying to do something different to break out of my own habits, because from writing from 10 years old on, I'm used to sitting on the floor with an acoustic guitar, having it bounce off the wall and be singing nice and quietly and soothing myself and coming up with ideas. And it's like, but now it's too low to sing. I can't sing this over a band. I have to put it up in a higher register so that I can sing it out over a band. And I have to write something that's more interesting to play drums to, because I love playing drums. And it's all these different ideas that occur to me out of necessity. Like this isn't thrilling me anymore. What is? Oh, this color is. Let me use
Do you
this.
ever feel overwhelmed with all of this? Do you ever feel like
Oh, absolutely.
sometimes it's just like too much?
Yeah, I get tired of hearing myself talk and think and teach, and everything I've ever written, I go, "Ah," and I could still do better, and I want to
Yeah.
make better recordings, and why don't my productions sound like Elliot Shiner, and why won't Dave O'Donnell teach me some of his tricks? And like there's still so many things calling me that I want to get better at and do. But I also realized that it's not necessarily desire, it's angst, and I don't want to give too much to the angst. And don't get me wrong, there are days where I'm in the hole and I'm crying and worried about all the same stuff that probably any human is. But
Back up a second about
okay, yeah.
desire and angst.
Okay. Well, because you can desire something, but if you're longing for it, you've already decided you can't have it, and it gets back to permission, and that's a really sad thing. So when you're crying your eyes out, thinking, I want this and I'll never have it, because you think you won't ever give it to yourself, it's like, no, give it to yourself, because as far as we know, there is this one life, and what are you waiting for?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that we just this sense of like, I don't know, like being playful is not, is frowned upon if you're, over the age of what, I don't know, 20. I mean, like, I think it's really, I mean, we need to, I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert says, it's to like distinguish between being childish and childlike.
Yeah.
Right? So
because we're all older, but we're just children in bigger bodies. Most of us, we're not adults necessarily. And can we really use our power for the good, as McCartney would say, and really show up and be kind and be, putting our best selves out into the world, rather than the angst and the fear and the hate and the disruption.
There's already too much of that, and
Right.
some of it passes, a lot of it is an entertainment, which is
Unfortunately, yeah, they make them into TV shows, and people think that's a good idea. Maybe I'll buy a terrible weapon and do terrible things. And it's like, I don't know what we're promoting half the time, but it isn't always good. And yet I have friends who read history and they say it's never been a better or worse time. People have always been the same. They've just been worse tortures in the past.
well, I think if you keep the climate out of the equation, I would buy that. Putting climate into the equation, I think that's just, I mean, I don't want to be a downer here, but like, that's a whole.
Well, you mean the world and the actual climate change?
The impact, yeah, where we're at now with this, it's, and this is not unrelated to creativity and wanting to express oneself, because I think there are a lot of people who are really struggling with this of all ages. But it can both block the desire to create because people feel despair, or conversely, maybe it can lead to creative action. I don't know, but I like what I was saying before, like I was all set to write another book after Beatleness, and then the election of 2016 happened, and I used to say, well, you're just using that as an excuse. No, I'm not using it as an excuse. I felt fucking traumatized. And I'm a privileged person in this culture, relatively speaking, right? But I felt traumatized, and of course, over the years and ongoing, the increased prevalence of sort of casual misogyny and all that was unleashed at that time. It was all very disturbing, and all the things that happened during those years, and I felt that it was harder to be creative because there was anxiety, but
I never pay attention to half of that stuff, and when I did, it was very disturbing, and I had to just go deeper into my art, because I thought, I can't stop it, I can't do anything about it. I could write a couple of songs that very few people will hear, but I don't have that outreach or that power or whatever, and I hope someone does. I hope some of the other people, that everybody will stand up and do what they're here to do, that kind of a thing.
I mean, I guess I got really I mean, I was always sort of into gardening, but I got really into it I guess starting in like the summer of 2017, that season. And I felt like, okay, well, I'm adding beauty to the world. Like, this is what I'm doing right now, you
You
know,
are.
and
And
it
yeah,
really felt nice. And of course, you know, when my neighbors and people comment on it, it's very nice. It's like, it makes it feel more worth doing if people tell me how much they appreciate my garden, you know, and so it feels, it's a little thing I'm doing, is like not, it's not having a huge impact, but like, you know, you do what you can do where you are, you know, I mean.
but here's the thing, we are energetic beings. Everything is energy. So if they talk about Zen and philosophies and a butterfly, something happening in Japan, and we feel it here, you doing the thing that is right for your heart and being kind and making a beautiful garden not only helps you feel good, it helps your neighbors feel good. And that also energetically goes out into the world,
Right.
right? So yeah, we're all here to be doing what we're here to do. If we would just do it, there would be more harmony. There would be more.
Well, you know, the problem is that well, there are a lot of, but you know, again, it gets back to this permission thing that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, voices about what you should do. And we, you know, this starts at a very young age. And
Yeah, I
you
think in some ways we're raised wrong because we think then that there is this one way to be, you know, that there's a definite right and wrong, and someone else always tells you whether or not you've missed the mark. So
oh,
you
no,
never let go of that. You put it in through all your teachers and 12 years of schooling, and then you go to college and there's more of that, or grad school and more of that. And you're still looking for outside approval. And that's a bunch of bunk.
it
The
is a,
only approval you need is your own to
that's
do
right.
anything in this life. And that's what I loved about the Beatles, was all this self-permission. And you don't have to dress a certain way. You don't have to be a certain way. You can do whatever you want. I was like, thank you, because that felt right to me. What they had to say and how they did things and the music they made. They even said they weren't the best musicians and that if we could do it, anybody could do it. I thought, great, I'll do it too.
Right, right.
You
Well,
know?
again, I guess this permission thing, you know, I mean, that was a
Yeah.
word that came up a lot with the Beatles, and interesting, cross culturally too. I remember talking to a woman who grew up in Mexico about the Beatles, and she said, you know, she's around our age, you know, and she's like, you know, she's first generation fan. She's like, yeah, they gave me permission, you know, and I mean, we're talking now in the context of creativity. I mean, I think they gave, in a sense, a broader permission, but certainly in terms of creativity and music and, you know, and
Breaking
just,
the mold.
yeah, yeah. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a musician, but I believe that my attitude or my approach to these things comes from them. I mean, it's one of the many ways
Oh,
they've,
absolutely.
you know,
I mean,
and,
one of the coolest things George ever said was, you know, they'd say, aren't you upset that you're not on the cover of Rolling Stone or you're this? They're like, I was on the cover of every major magazine every day for years. He's like, you know, we exist whether they were on the cover of this magazine or not. You know, it's like he has a life. You know, he was living the way he wanted to live. And I think that's what everybody else is getting wrong. It's like, enjoy your life. You know, what do you have to do to enjoy your life that doesn't hurt you and doesn't hurt everybody around you? You know, that's all you need to know, because if you could follow what thrills you and what's exciting and what's inspiring, you wouldn't have time to be a jerk. You know, you would be more concerned with how you feel, and you'd be taking good care of yourself, and you'd be likable, and people would enjoy what you put into the world rather than
yeah,
the nonsense that's out there.
you know, I think there are a lot of,
My theory, hidden.
not only do we not have permission, but I think there's also, you know, there's so many messages saying that we're not enough, like you know, the scarcity mindset.
That's a terrible mindset, and it's untrue.
It's untrue, and we're so, you know, inculcated into that way of thinking that, and
Fear-based.
it makes you feel like it's disempowering, you know.
Absolutely.
Um,
That's why my friend Kate Chadbourne, who's also a writer and musician, says Earth is focusing school. We're here to learn how to put our attention on what we want so that our RAS will keep bringing us more of what we want rather than more of what we don't want.
I want to, I don't know if this is
Gonna
gonna,
show us the quilts.
oh, I would like, that might take another second, but I can show you my Beatles garden art.
You've got garden art in your own garden?
I may be, yeah, in my Beatles garden.
Wow. All right. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you have to go to like a minute and 10 seconds in. No, an hour and 10 seconds in to see the picture of the Beatle garden. And then, you know, we should talk more about the Beatles because there's been so much inspiration from them. We have them to blame for anything we're doing.
Wait a second here. Bringing up your whole.
Trying to fill the dead time.
Sorry, here we go.
Sometimes I edit it out.
Here's one of them. That's actually not.
In my Beatle garden. Oh no, share your screen. Share your screen and show it.
Oh, that's a good way to, okay, I can share screen.
Oh, that's cool. Look at that.
Yeah, it was a poster, an Abbey Road poster I had like forever. And I had this old window and I just realized, hey, that would look really cool in the garden. And so I did that.
In your Beatles garden, Johnny.
If I can share my screen, that would be, yeah, that's the way to do it.
Right, it's on the bottom and it's green.
Okay, yeah, no, I know that. I was just trying to open the thing so you wouldn't see all my insanity that I have here. Okay, share
Well,
screen.
you share the window that you prefer, yeah.
Right, here we go.
I don't see your whole desktop.
You see it now?
Oh, look at that. We can work it out. That's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah, so, you know, I thought, well, there should be Beatles garden art. So
that's awesome. You can make a fortune with that. So
well,
you made that, is it a ceramic?
I'd had some dishes that were my mother's that I didn't really want them. I didn't want to get rid of them, but they had some resonance for me. So I smashed them up and used the fragments. And I got it at, the craft store, like the cement and the mold, and I just did it. There's another one that I think you'll especially.
It probably felt cathartic to smash them up too.
That one. Yes, it was cathartic. There's things for yourself.
Take that, in that memory, take that, smash. But where did you break them that it didn't make such a mess? And people always talk about bashing a pillow or breaking glass. And it's like, where are you going to break the glass? Then you got to clean it up.
I don't know. I just did it like, how did I do it? I probably put it in a
bag.
pillowcase maybe, and a hammer.
Okay, yeah.
Something like that.
So you didn't have the pleasure of throwing it and watching it just shatter, because who's going to clean that up? That would be a terrible thing to put out there.
No, I was very, and when I take on, like, I get a little bit like,
bam, bam with the hammer.
Hey, how is this going to work? Like, this is, a lot of the things that I do that are creative, I feel like a lot of it is engineering almost. Like,
yeah, you got to think it through because it could be quite detrimental to have to clean something up.
Right. You don't always know how materials are going to behave, but I would love to show you the quilt, but it might take too long and be not a good.
Well, show me the, you had the other one with the Abbey Road. You didn't put that one on the share screen.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's a painting you did over the poster?
No, it's actually in a window. I had an old window and I put the poster behind the window.
Oh, okay. So it's facing outside.
Right. This is like when you walk by my house, like this is like you see, in other words, it's standing against the foundation of the building. Yeah. So, it's like a triple decker, right? So it looks like, at first glance, it looks like a window, whatever. Again, it's playful. It's silly, right?
It's wonderful. But is the poster inside or is it going to get wet?
Well, no, it's sealed in. It's sealed in this thing. Yeah, that's
that a window
involved here. What?
Did you say it's a window frame that's just propped up against the house?
Basically, yeah. It's sealed.
It's not a real window, like you could have the poster on the inside of the window facing out.
No, in fact, when it gets really windy, sometimes it blows over. So I have to.
The grass looks real, but the very top of that staff with all the cool things on it almost looks like you did it on a painting.
Oh,
on the screen, it looks like a painting.
Somebody got me a gift. It's like at night they add some color to this. Like
that's very cool.
Yeah,
I love that you're doing that. It's like,
Yeah,
again,
it's
whatever makes you happy, you know?
it's the playfulness of it. I think that's really,
Yeah.
thinking about how I felt when I was doing this thing. I don't
I have
know.
a, I have a song called Mystery, and it says, whatever keeps the groove in your step, you know, like whatever you want to believe, as long as you're using your power for the good and it's positive, it really doesn't matter. Let's not fight about what we believe and how different it is. Let's just come together and I didn't mean that as a Beatle pun, but like, let's just show up bringing our best selves.
Right. And sometimes that's challenging.
Because people are unwilling sometimes. I'm unwilling sometimes. I know where I don't belong someplace, like this isn't going to be fun for me. I don't want to go.
Well, sometimes it's also hard to access your best self too.
That's when I'd rather go take a nap or
Or go for a walk
yeah, yeah, or go smash some glass on a pillowcase. You got a good idea there.
or do some yoga.
Yeah, I'll put the headphones on and float downstream.
Yeah. I mean, my experience of yoga is so, I'm awed by it. And I use that word really carefully because I think the word is overused, awesome. But I really am awed by how yoga has affected me. I'm surprised, mystified,
Delighted.
and delighted.
That's awesome. Really
And
awesome. And
I've
that's
only
it.
been doing it for a few months. Like, if I stick with it and I continue to do this, like, it's exciting to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, any of the things, like people will say the road to enlightenment is yoga, or the road to is meditation, or the road is, walking, or the road is exercise, or the road is writing a song. It doesn't matter what mode you use. You're just trying to feel better and not necessarily even get somewhere, but you want to get out of your own way. So yeah, brain
Challenge.
training.
It's like, just forget about yourself, and it's not about you. Like, just let it. Don't censor, don't edit, don't pre-edit, just see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens and then put it away if you can't make decisions about it now. Like when I write those free associations and first started doing that, basically scribbling nonsense, I didn't expect it to be anything and I laughed at it. And then the object writing is actually pick an object and write about it. And I remember picking an object. I was in my room thinking, you should do a little writing exercise today. It's like, I don't feel like it. It's like, yeah, just go 15 minutes, window, go. And I set a timer and wrote everything I was thinking about a window. And I was reluctantly doing it because it was like, I wasn't in the mood anyway, but I was like, I can see through, I can see you. I pretended somebody was standing on the front lawn. I can't touch you, but you can see me. I can almost hear you. I could see your shoes, or I could see this and da, da, da. It was just on and on nonsense. And then a couple of months later, flipping through my word book, got a really cool little thing happening on the guitar. I need some words. I need some words. And I started singing, I can see through. I can see you. I can't touch you, but you can see me. I can almost hear you. And I, on another page, had written down the sentence, how's it going to end? Because I loved the Truman movie. And she's wearing that button in the film where it says, how's it going to end? And I thought, that's a good question because everything is a mystery about this life. We don't know anything, basically. And I just, how's it gonna end? Became my chorus. And as soon as I said that, my brain said, what's it all about? So like, if you could give yourself something to jump off of, your own brain will take it someplace else. And you just follow the little seeds, you follow the little ideas and make something out of nothing. It's just so fun.
It is fun, and fun, like, fun is one of those, it's like, again, this feeling of like needing permission, or that it's somehow,
It has to come from you. Otherwise it doesn't feel right anyway. I mean,
it's irresponsible.
even all the accolades and the ones who win an award or a trophy or a Grammy or an Emmy or this, it's other people deciding you should be acknowledged.
Mm.
So I've been acknowledging my friends. This is why I want to have them on. I want to say, I love your work. I love that you've spent your life writing. I love that you're even dabbling or struggling or whatever you're doing with this whole creative thing, because that's what we're all doing down here. We're all kicking around trying to do something. And why not give yourself a Grammy? You know, I got a 3D printer guy on Etsy, made a couple of Grammys for some of my friends and myself, and just put them over there in the studio. And it's like, who says this deserves a Grammy and this does and this doesn't? You
Right.
say.
Right.
If
Well,
I all of a sudden had a real nice thing that I could design and give it to people and it became a thing, all of a sudden it would be just as important as any of the other award shows, but it's still me deciding who I want to give it to. So decide to give it to yourself. Make your heart feel good. You know, it's like, it's not a lie. You know, we're all doing really good work, whether people know about us or not.
yeah, yes. And you have, I think it's important to approach that to get rid of, you know, any ideas about efficiency or monetizing or any of, in other words, anything practical, anything quantifiable, like that needs to be put aside.
It's a secondary thing. If that happens, that's wonderful, but it shouldn't necessarily, unless you're starting a business, be the goal. And even so, some people who are out just trying to meet a need find that they're making more money just because they did it the fun way, you know, the way Dana Wilde says. So nothing is more important than we feel good, and we're not going to really accomplish much unless we feel good.
That's
You know,
true. And it's true.
it's
And
just the wrong vibration for it. It just doesn't happen. You'll struggle your whole life.
yeah, that was my ringtone of A Hard Day's Night there. I should have heard it.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I mean,
I have And Your Bird Can Sing.
that's your ringtone?
Yeah, I made, yeah, you can make your own ringtones in iTunes. I made that one. And then I have a brother in California. I made his ringtone, Good Day Sunshine. And my brother in Paramus, New Jersey is Your Smiling Face, James Taylor.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think people need to like cut themselves some slack. And
Yeah.
you know, if you feel good, you're doing something you love, you're healthier, you know, you even in your body, you know, one of the things that I realized from yoga, I mean, you know, I studied psychology, you know, I'm a smart person. I know, you know, I know the mind and body are connected. I've known that for, but I know it now in a whole new way. And that's part of what's so amazing to me.
Yes. You've experienced it in your own skin.
It's just a whole different thing. And it's really exciting. And it's like I noticed like the first time I do certain things since yoga, it's like, oh, this is the first time I rode my bike since yoga. This is the first time I was gardening.
It feels different, doesn't it?
It's different. And
it's lovely.
It's hard to describe, but yeah.
More in touch with yourself, taking up space. And where everything is. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's like I feel like I can sometimes like envision my skeleton and all the layers of everything, and like
everything working together.
I didn't know were there, and I don't know. It's just kind of exciting.
Well, you know, I'm only 4'11", and I've always liked being able to lift my own gear and take my stuff to my shows and whatever. But I've always felt like my muscles didn't seem to work together. It seems like I was trying to use this one by itself, and this hurt and that hurt. And if I went to the gym or tried to bicycle or did anything else but walking, you know, trying to lift weights and stuff, it was like, I can't stand the way they hurt for days and days afterwards, you know. And just last year, I think it was, I started planking, the hover, because my friend's mom was like 85 years old. And she said, do a plank every night, count to 100 right before bed. I was like, she's 85 and she holds it for 100 seconds. I was like, that's amazing. I know. I thought, okay, well, if she can do it, I could start working up to that. And so I would just do a couple of seconds, and I just built up to it. Today I did it for like 2 minutes, 20 seconds, and my whole body feels different. I have muscles that are so much more defined and feeling good and working together, so that, you know, because I don't have the height and the leverage to push a door even open in a department store, let's say. I'm not in the center of the door. A lot of things, like a friend of mine who's left-handed as well should say, it's a right-handed world. There are a lot of things that are just
Oh,
not designed for left-handed people.
it's true.
Things aren't designed for short people either. So this extra strength, I'm noticing it all working together and working for me. And it's just a simple hover. And I don't have to spend 7 hours in the gym a week. It's like just hover after a walk when you're warmed up, and boom, all the muscles are happy.
You can tell when your body's happy. You can tell that, you can feel the vitality in you.
Mhm. And all the other things you're saying with bad thoughts, you're kicking up cortisol. It's like you have a bad memory of somebody sticking a fork in your eye or something, and you keep taking a new fork out and keep re-hitting yourself in the eye saying, I remember that, it hurt so much, and here it is again. And you're doing it to yourself constantly. I know people who've been in therapy for 6 billion years, and they're still talking about the same things and the same problems, and it still hurts, and they're still upset about it. And it's like, for God's sake, don't you see you're keeping it alive? That's what the RAS is doing for you. You keep saying, give me more of it. Give me more of it. I hate it. Give me more of it. This is my life, and it's just such a drag. We're just not taught these things. It's so annoying to spend so much time in school when you want to do your art and you're growing up and you got to go to school, And they don't teach you the most important stuff, how to take care of your brain and your thoughts and emotions, how to take care of your money, and how to stay well.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
Annoying.
Being healthy in mind and body in this culture is an act of resistance. It really is. It's so hard to be healthy. And
stop kicking up the stress.
Yeah, it's very challenging. And we're living through a very interesting moment. And I think that the things we've been talking about, creativity, self-expression, self-actualization, and with that comes a certain satisfaction and freedom, and feel, like we're not as fearful of other people, we're not as closed up, I think, when we're
discerning, we know where not to be. We're discerning, we know where not to be,
that too.
I'm not going to be stupid about it.
Right. But
like, trust in the Lord, but lock the car. There was a bumper sticker that was funny.
Right. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's so much more could be said about all of this, I suppose. But yeah, creativity. And I think a lot of times young people, they like to draw, they like to sing, they like to, there's a freedom. And then they kind of, school and growing up and self-consciousness take, they get through puberty, they feel too self-conscious to continue those joyful activities.
Did you see Hello, God, It's Me, Margaret?
I haven't yet. No,
it's fantastic.
See it.
I just saw it twice the other night. It was really good.
Nice. Wow. Okay. I will definitely, yeah.
So what do you do to bring back inspiration? What do you do to get yourself out of a rut? That's what everybody wants to know, because we can all fall in one. It's how do you get out of it?
Well, I'm a big walker.
Me too. Love to walk.
I don't know. I read a lot.
That helps get out of your own head. Watch a movie, read a book.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I read about the things that are bothering me.
Like, yeah, I look for some skills.
So like when I had this, I mean, in some ways it's like I'm really late to this yoga thing, but like I was so blown away by it. And
so great.
And was I going to say something? I lost my train of thought now about, what did you ask me? Like how to get out of a rut. So when I saw that these memories started coming, I, of course, being the nerd that I am, started doing some research, and then I learned all about childhood trauma and all this. And so, so sometimes, I tend to intellectualize, but it does help sometimes because it takes me out of the immediate experience of it. I understand it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I can now proceed. But I think physical, like dancing, I put music. It was so hot today. It's hard to go for a walk these past few days. I put music on. I dance around my place.
Nice.
I hang from my thing. I got it like a
chin-up bar
over my bathroom door, which has been great. I think physically, I mean, I mean, I used to, sometimes I'll write, I'll journal if something's bothering me, try to kind of process it.
Good.
But since yoga, I'm realizing more and more that, I mean, again, the physical activity, like you
Yeah.
say, smashing things, going for a walk, doing something a little bit difficult, something that's, like a bike ride that's maybe more of an incline than you're comfortable with, but doing it anyway, that I think stuff like that.
To challenge yourself in different ways and accomplish
Yes,
things feels
challenging.
good. Yeah. Yeah. I think we have so many layers to us that sometimes certain things get to deeper level layers. Maybe that's what's happening with the yoga. Like we can know things intellectually, but to know something in our body or to know something in our heart or to experience it in some kind of connected way with another person, that spiritual way, that energetic way is just such a beautiful thing. All that stuff can help. And I think it's our job in these bodies, in this life, this is our interface. We've got to figure out how to take care of it. And we've got to figure out how to keep all those different things happy and soothe ourselves in different ways. I think we're probably every age we've ever been. And there's, probably younger selves inside that still want what they wanted, whatever those things were for you at the time, so figuring that stuff out is great.
Yeah, I feel like I'm learning a lot about how to be a creative person in the world in a way that maximizes my joy and also what I can contribute. And it's taken me quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I was programmed when I was younger in ways that did not serve me.
None
And
of us were, I don't think, but
right,
it's up to us to keep updating that software.
exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a long time, and being a grandmother now also it's a very important part of my identity, because I feel like there's a responsibility that comes with that to really
Show up and be grandma, don't be your 2-year-old self.
well, that, but also to impart to make sure that part of my legacy are these values and ways of being that we've been talking about, because I think in the world they're going to grow up in, it's going to be even more important to know yourself and be centered and know how to interact with other people in a productive way. And I mean, these things have always been important, but I don't know.
That's
I mean, I guess it's like there's so many countervailing messages that cultural messages that I think are harmful, that I feel like to the extent that I can be of any influence, that I want to have that, I want to pass down,
nice.
healthy ways of being, I guess I would describe it as. I don't know.
So you've written a book called Beatleness, and it's
Yes.
about the fans,
Yeah.
about the time that the
Well,
Beatles.
it's about growing up here's how I talk about it. It's a cultural history of the 1960s through the eyes of Beatles fans. Okay. But I mean,
like that.
it's about the experience of being an engaged Beatle fan in that magic moment of history, the book covers 1960. Well, I'll do a brief review of the Kennedy era, but it really starts with this assassination, Ed Sullivan, 79 days later, and it ends in 1970. And I talk in the present tense, so it's like you're there on the timeline. It's
cool.
not told as history; it's told as present tense.
That's cool.
So yeah, I did that. Yeah.
And do you have other books as well?
That is my only book, and
lots of articles and things online, or a blog place. Do you have a
yeah, my website, Candy Leonard.
Substack, or what is that called?
Well, I have a couple of things at Medium, but most of my writing is at candyleonard.com. There's a section on essays. I would like to write another book, and I may be doing that as we speak. I'm not sure.
Sounds like it.
I am writing again. And
yeah, you said you were in a very creative period when I wrote to you.
Yeah,
I am. Do you want to do one of these chats? So what was defining and or getting you into this new creative place that is different from when you feel like you're not in it?
Well,
I mean, because I'm always telling my students, just because you're not writing right now doesn't mean you have writer's block. Like we're sitting here in a classroom, you're not eating. Do you have eater's block? Do you have sleeper's block? You're not sleeping. I'm noticing that you're not sleeping. You know, it's like we love to play these mind games on ourselves and just completely, sabotage ourselves before we even begin.
well, it was when my therapist said, okay, if you don't want to write, don't beat yourself up over it. You want to quilt and forget about writing. Just do that. And that's when that actually unleashed a lot of creativity around this quilt. I was doing it. I mean, I don't know, like
Your
for
cork rose.
a baking moment. What?
Your cork rose. Instead of holding your cork down under the
Yes,
water,
yeah, yeah.
you came back to your true self, which is a very creative person.
I got into, I mean, would, now I feel like I want to show you my quilt, but, and then, so I was working on the quilt and it really unleashed a lot of energy. It was really great. And then the yoga was really the thing that unleashed it. But the recognition that, like we were saying before, the quilting, writing, gardening, the way I arrange my plants on the shelf. In other words, these are all creative activities. And I think everybody needs to do that. Maybe some people more than others for whatever reason, or whatever, I don't know, talent, proclivity, temperament, who knows? I don't know. When I meet, this has been the case for years, even before my hair was like this, like I meet people like, oh, you look like, like, are you an artist? Like people just assume I was an artist. I don't know why. I was putting something that people thought I was an artist. So I was I'm a social scientist, I'm a writer, I'm an artist. Like, I don't know. I mean, even it's all creativity in different guises,
Absolutely. We're using the same tools. We all have the same
Yeah.
kind of access to the same kind of things. We're all made of the same stuff. So
Yeah. If I'd gone to art school or if I'd been encouraged to do music, like who knows? Like, oh, I could have been this, I could have been that. Whatever. I'm here now. I did what I did. And
you can start anything at any age. There's no limits. I mean, there are stories where people didn't even climb Mount Everest till they're 62 years old, or pick up violin at 63, or, like I started drums when I was 36. I didn't start writing songs on piano till I was 49. And out of nowhere, for some reason, I'm doing a podcast. I didn't start that till I was 63. But yeah, I started playing guitar at 9 and had a guitar at 2 years old. And writing songs at 10. I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter. It's like, you want to do it, do it.
Yeah. If it seems right and it speaks to you, then you got to do it.
You definitely have to do it because it's your beautiful life.
Exactly. And there's, that satisfaction of seeing something you made or hearing something in your case, hearing or, seeing it out in the world is like, I did this thing, and not so much in a braggy sort of way, but like you've expressed
Well, probably we're proud of ourselves for getting out of the rut and getting our stuff together to do something. It's like, look at this. I not only got out of bed today, I created something. Woohoo!
Right.
It's another reason to feel a little.
Maybe brought some joy to other people along the way,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we're here to encourage each other and celebrate each other.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unhappiness out there right now, and a lot of
people should just get a dachshund. It just helps, or a kitty cat like you've got.
Yeah, well, it makes it different. It takes you out of yourself,
It does.
You
Especially if you're going to just keep dwelling on the wrong things like I used to do. You just have to learn how to focus, learn how to get to what actually matters in the moment, take care of your needs, and get to the fun stuff. Make time for the fun stuff.
It sounds yes, that's the goal.
Well, this was so cool.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I want to show you my quilt.
Oh my God. Check that out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's gorgeous.
It's like, actually there's a 12-inch square in there too, but it's mostly built on 6-inch squares. There's really no pattern at all.
Oh my God, it's cool.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is, I mean, for me, and like the quilt that I told you I dismantled an old quilt when I
Right.
made this. Actually, no, the old quilt was, this is the old quilt. Why is it? What it's, look, oh, there we go. That's the old quilt.
I like
Okay,
yours better.
right. So this is where I was at then.
Yeah.
Okay, and I designed this on graph paper. Actually, I'd never quilt. I was just like, kind of like, again, like seat of the pants. Like, so I do.
Oh, you made this one too.
Yeah, this is the other thing about creativity. You have to
That's
not
so
be
cool.
afraid. You have to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the answer is often nothing.
Right. And what's the worst thing about putting something out so you can get to the next thing? I know people who just trying to finish and perfect the one thing their whole life. And you're like, that probably still isn't teaching you what you need to know. But if you bring something to the finish line and start something else, you'll be in a new place.
Yeah, yeah. It's
That's fantastic too.
there's this sense of like that you have to do it right, or you're gonna fail, or you're gonna do it wrong, or
That's
like,
why it would have been so good if there were no grades in school ever, because everybody's so afraid to do anything, you know?
I made this at the turn of the millennium.
Oh,
So there's millennial fabric in there, but I liked the pattern, and so I want, this is the new one, but it's, like it says so much. I mean,
yeah.
just about me as, like, in other words, that's how I was confined in those boxes, and now I'm, it's like I feel like there's a lot of metaphors here in this.
Of course. Tell me what they are. You've got the words. You're a
Well, I
writer.
mean, again, it gets the free motion, meander, improv. In other words, that I'm listening to my own voice. I'm not doing it the way it's always been done, and
That's very bees love you.
I mean, I see there's an audacity to this quilt. First of all, it's ridiculously big. It's 90 by 90,
That's fantastic.
and it's just. It's like, yeah, I haven't looked at this. I mean, I see it every day. It's on my bed, but like seeing it in this picture, in this context, is making me think about it in different ways. And I really appreciate your indulging me.
I think it's gorgeous. I love the colors, and it's astonishing that it's that big. How long did it take you to make it?
A long time. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I was in no hurry to finish it.
I know it wasn't about a dedeline, and it wasn't
Exactly.
about a grade, and it wasn't about a.
I mean, I listened to podcasts.
That's great.
Or music, it took a long time, but I knew I was going to finish it. I was in no hurry. I mean, it took a while, and the back I used the back of it. I should have a picture. The back I used as kind of a workshop of trying new techniques. I also like push the limits of my sewing machine, and this probably analogies with music and production too. It's like, oh, it can do this. Oh, wow. So the back is like different techniques that I played around with, but didn't make the front. It was funny because you'll appreciate this. When I was doing the back, and like I was like thinking, because a lot of the back is from the first quilt, I was thinking this is gonna be like Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. It's gonna be a double A-side quilt.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I mean, I'm sure you do too, a lot of Beatle related metaphors, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna be a double A-side. It's not quite, but yeah, it was really an exploration of it was just so liberating,
Nice.
and it's what made me realize that, how it's not about the task or the medium, it's about the energy, the impulse.
Oh yeah, your intention, your energy, and what you will allow yourself to have, like you say, the permission. What podcasts are you listening to? I recently exhausted everything on Julia Louis-Dreyfus's website, Wiser Than Me. That's so great.
Oh, this is her favorite websites?
Not a website,
podcast?
sorry. She has a podcast. It's fantastic.
Oh,
She
okay.
interviews Carol Burnett and Jane Fonda and all these fantastic women that are wiser than her.
Oh, I should definitely check that out. I like women who are wiser than me.
I like Mel Robbins. I like who have I been listening to? Oh, Dana Wilde and Brooke Castillo, Conan O'Brien sometimes. But I like it when it's one-on-one and not other people hanging out just pretending to laugh.
Yeah.
And enjoy it's too much distraction.
Sounds like the stuff you're listening to is way more entertaining than when I listen to. I listen to a lot of like, I would say the podcast I've ever listened to the most is like 10% Happier with Dan Harris.
Oh, cool. I've heard of that.
And The Hidden Brain.
Oh, good.
I listen to a lot of stuff at the intersection of spirituality and psychology, sort of.
Yeah. Have you checked out the teachings of Abraham Hicks? You can listen to them for free on
I
YouTube.
remember you told me about her years ago.
Yeah, I find that very freeing and good.
That was before I was on my journey. No, I have actually, I don't have TV anymore, so I'm a big YouTube user. I ended my relationship with Xfinity, Comcast, whatever. So I watch YouTube a lot. And anyway, so I have explored, I have listened to her.
Yeah. I felt like they were just the most down to earth, freeing, uplifting, kindest way to describe this whole human existence. Like they never put people down for asking a dumb question. And it's just amazing how framing it in the best possible light they are, and helping people just get out of their own heads and get onto something positive, What
You're
about
reminding me, it's not visible in this picture, but one of the squares down here.
make your screen brighter?
Oh, that might, it might be visible. Actually, I will try.
You can just turn up the brightness of your own screen. Or if I turn up my brightness.
It won't be visible from this side. But anyway, one of this, as I was learning these different techniques, and one of them was embroidery and writing with the sewing machine and all this,
Nice.
So one of these squares I have on it, it says, see the good, trust the good.
Oh, that's great. And keep putting your mind back on the good, and trusting that you're doing it right, because there is no right or wrong. It's up to you.
Well, I think I find that a very helpful little mantra that I've.
And I'm only talking about creating art, of course, not hurting yourself or hurting somebody else. What about books? Do you read a lot of books?
I do read lots of books, but again,
how many per year? Or do you listen to Audible books too?
I don't do Audible. I should, because it'd be more efficient, because I walk a lot. But
I know it's really fun to have people like what's her name? Come on. Keep talking. I'll figure it out.
I'm reading, right? I oftentimes I read things based on who I hear talking on a podcast. Like it's like somebody I want to learn more about. I don't read fiction at all, which I may need to try again to read some fiction. I'm reading right now a book called Everyday Utopia, about is a new book about how to create community, and it sort of reviews like different utopian attempts through the, historically, and what it means today and for the future. I read a lot of sort of, I guess you'd call it like current affairs. I read a lot about some climate stuff. I read, I don't know. I mean, I'm reading constantly. I'm trying to think what's next to my bed right now. Oh, I'm reading now a book about Jew booze, about the interaction between Judaism and Buddhism.
Oh, cool.
I was listening to a podcast. It was Sharon Salzberg, and I think it was Dan Harris, and they were talking about how all these many of these sort of spiritual teachers of a certain age were Jewish, and how, like, why is that? And that somebody should write a book about it. And they were naming all these people. And, not only, and many of these people also have a story about how I went to India in 1969. What propelled me to do that? Anyway, so I was thinking, that, like, again, like maybe, because they were going on and on about this phenomenon of, and that's so I got interested in this. Maybe I should write, maybe that's, because it does interest me. And anyway, so there is a book, somebody did write a book. It looks like, I think it was a dissertation actually, but it was turned into a book about Jew booze in America, which is actually, it's very interesting. I'm enjoying that a lot.
Oh,
I
cool.
read a lot about Buddhism and spirituality, and but also like, a lot about tech. I read a lot of tech critiques.
Mhm.
Brotopia, I recommend to anybody. I think that the ubiquity of technology in our lives is really detrimental. And I think we're going to look back on this, if we're around, and be horrified at how we're living. I really do. But anyway, so you asked what I read. I mean, that's, that stuff like that.
Go back to seeing you bigger.
Oh, sorry.
Stop
Yeah.
sharing here. There you are. Gina Davis has a fantastic book. Did you read that one?
I know she has. She's been running this
Dying
institute.
of Politeness, a memoir. That's fantastic.
What is it called?
Dying of Politeness.
Oh, okay.
Listening to her read it is hilarious. I mean, she's
I'll
just
bet.
a wonderful reader. Yeah.
Oh, you're reminded. I have a book now in the other room, Everyday Sexism. I'm reading that again. Yeah, I read a lot about gender stuff. That continues to be a vexing problem in various ways. I don't know. I'm trying to make sense out of the world and trying to.
It's never going to happen.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where I can do the most good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
And
but I think you're doing it, as long as you're keeping yourself happy, you're doing the most good, because everywhere you go, you're going to be bringing better energy and whatever work you're working on at the time that people can enjoy. I mean, it's always an inside job, and there's never going to be no chaos in the world. I think that's what I find so upsetting. When I was a young kid, I thought every generation got smarter and smarter and things got better and better. And we go in all different ways. It's sometimes in circles and backwards and upside down and inside out. And to think everybody's ever going to be thinking the same way or feeling the same thing or getting the same benefit from yoga or making a quilt or writing a song that everybody's going to like, it's just never going to happen. There's no consensus. It's unfortunate, but everybody's going to always be on their own path, and everybody's going to always be thinking their own things and going after their own needs, which is important. People should be going after their own needs. Please meet your needs and stop being such a pain, and come fully able to give of yourself rather than just complaining, like.
Even that, like, some people don't feel entitled to take care of their own needs. They don't feel like they have permission to take care of themselves. And
some people don't have the resources, and then that's where we can help.
The whole other thing is but
yeah, so it's too big. It's too big for any one person, and it's the thing that, like Ringo says in A Hard Day's Night, you ought to stop being so scornful. It's twisting your face up. It's like all these things will twist our face up, and all these things will really bring us down because they're unsolvable for whatever reason. I mean, even Jesus in the Bible said there will be poor always, there will be this always. I was like, what? I don't want that. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be in harmony. I want everybody to live in peace. I think the Russians want their children to be happy too. Like I'm just a lover of, I was an infant in the 60s, but I'm all about peace too,
Something, when you said before about like you grew up thinking like every generation kind of like gets smarter and gets it better. I mean, I think that I grew up with that too. And I think part of it is that era when we grew up where there was a lot more optimism and positivity. And
I don't know. I was scared to pieces watching anything on the news when I was a young kid in the 60s.
There was violence, and there was a lot, division and all that, but there was a trajectory.
Well, there was a hope. There was a hope of consciousness,
of better, of improvement in a lot of ways, and even in terms of government and just how we had the Civil Rights Act, Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start. There was a period where human potential was like on the radar. Like, how can we kind of make this a little better?
Depending upon where we look, that it's on the radar. It's on the radar still. Yeah.
But we, I think that there was an optimism that people don't necessarily have right now.
Well, it depends on what people we're talking about, I think, because if we're talking about Abraham Hicks people or Dana Wilde people or Brooke Castillo people or people reading books that are optimistic or podcasts that are optimistic, we'd think, wow, people are enlightened. People are trying. People are wanting to make it a better, like take a sad song and make it better. But if we're looking at all the chaos and the disconnect and the sadness and the horror, we're going to think it's worse. So I don't know what the percentages always are. Sometimes people say life is 50-50. I don't really know. I try to not take in too much of the other stuff because I physically can't handle it. It devastates me.
I take in much less than I used to. Yeah, I don't watch the news anywhere near as much as I used to. There's no point. I mean, it's the same shit all the time. Like,
it is. It's like saying we have a backup on Route 93. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're commuting during commuting hours. You don't even have to listen to it half the time because it's the same every day. It's a mess.
Yes. And
but sometimes they do tell you a detour.
It was like, I mean, during, after the election in 2016, like I realized, okay, I need to be informed, but I don't need to be immersed, and I guess that's kind of how I feel about, like, I think as a citizen, we are, we think of ourselves as consumers before we think of ourselves as citizens. And I think that that's a real problem. But I think as a citizen, like, one should be informed as with, and seek information of as truth, as reliable information to the extent that you can, but not to be immersed in the noise and the all the drama around. I can't believe what, I've been off Facebook for almost 3 years now. And every once in a while I'll have to go back in to like check something, or just occasionally, there's 2 private groups I'm in, which I can tolerate anyway. But when I go back in there, because I'm not used to it anymore, I'm astounded at what a stupid waste of time it is.
Well, even when the internet started, people called it the big worldwide waste of time. But I find a lot of knowledge out there, and I'm very picky about what I put in my brain.
Well, that's the thing. I tell my grandson, I wrote this thing called Grandma Candy's Rules, Tools, and Jewels for my grandson on his 12th birthday.
Oh, this is great. Read them to us.
Well, there's 72 things.
Okay, never mind.
I can put a link into it, though. It's at Medium, actually. But the
72.
Point, what I wanted to say about think about what you ingest, your media diet, as you would if the food you put into your body, because these
that what you eat you are.
It sticks with you. You expose yourself to these horrible things and
you react to them.
Yeah, you want to keep it healthy,
You got to be dedicated to a healthy mind, and that means TV shows and everything else.
Right. And to know yourself enough to know, like, I've never liked violent movies,
me neither.
Any of that stuff. And I know that about myself. And even certain things, like, I know if I watch certain things before going to bed, that it's not going to be a good idea. Like violent things, just like I don't read fiction, right? So when I watch movies or get into stories, like, I just like, it's like anyway, like, but you have to protect your sensorium. You have to protect your nervous system.
Yes. And we have a bunch of different systems in there that need to be protected. So that's smart.
It's so vulnerable. And so I think a lot of us are really walking around with frazzled nervous systems.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was reading about the vagus nerve and how they say if you breathe predominantly out of your right nostril, your nervous system is sort of shot, the whole left side, so that you have to do these different exercises to breathe on the other side and calm your vagus nerve. One of them is singing a low pitch, like a,
I read that recently. Yes.
Which is like everybody chanting Om. So that's probably what it's doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, all these things, like nobody teaches you these things, Western medicine certainly doesn't want you. It's funny about this yoga thing, getting back to this, but like I was dealing with some issues in my lower back and leg that, I was seeing a neurologist and having EMG and all that. And I canceled all of that because all these problems went away. Like no
that's great.
neurologist is going to tell me, go try yoga, right? In other words, our system does not even provide people with tools that have been scientifically proven to be helpful.
Right. For thousands and thousands of years, not
Right.
just made in a laboratory yesterday.
Exactly. So, I think that we need to take care of ourselves. And I think we do need to explore alternatives, but not in a crazy, irresponsible way.
Well, here's the thing. You and me, need to do these things. We're not saying everybody should, It's like everybody should figure out what they need to do. It reminds me of the Life of Brian movie, right? The guy's running away because he's not Jesus, he's Brian, but he trips and loses a sandal. Everybody goes, it's a sign, it's a sign. Everybody should take off the left slipper or whatever. And within that just short scene, they did like 16 different funny things that I went, there's all the different religions, it was like, there's all the different beliefs of how you should be or what you should do to be calm or to be happy or to be creative or to be whatever. And it's like, find your own.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't matter what it is, just get there. You want to get there, You
want to get out of the sour milk sea.
There you go. There you go. Have you seen this one? Such a great picture.
No.
George lifting up Ringo. Happy birthday, Ringo.
Is that what is that magazine?
This was the cover of Brandeis magazine where a friend of mine used to teach, and the photographer had gone there. So they did a spread on the Beatles, and does it say his face? Yes, Henry Grossman. If you look up Henry Grossman photographs from 1958, or he graduated in 1958, I guess. And then Henry Grossman took these pictures and so many others of the Beatles, and they're really good shots.
He took that wonderful shot of the black and white with the light, like this back of their heads with the lights.
Oh, I have a poster of that in my other room. Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, I wanted that to be the cover of my book, but that was not going to happen. They got some don't be picture anyway.
Yeah, it's funny how things will get allowed for certain things and other permissions won't. Like I was showing my students how you could just pick a poem and write a song to someone else's words, because a lot of us instrumental people can write music more than we can write words. So that's why the free association and the object writing is good. Just freely play with words and put them in different orders and make things happen. And you can surprise yourself, even if you're not a writer like you. And I was writing a song to a poem by Mary Oliver. And you shouldn't do that because you should only pick public domain. So when I got in touch with her people to say, I really like this song, can I release this tune? They were like, absolutely not, and unfortunately for her estate, they said no, because there are a whole bunch of people in my world that would have never read Mary Oliver. And to have heard that poem was a real gem. It was short and sweet and funny. And I would have loved to have sung it, because that's what the music came out of me was about, that particular poem. So then I had my friend Kate Chadbourne write different lyrics to it, and we saved it as a song, and changed it around. But she called it Tender and wrote even better words, really, and saved the song. But it, for a moment, could have been from a Mary Oliver poem. And
that would have been quite a nice collaboration. I mean, that would have been.
Well, yeah, but see, I'm never trying to I'm going to hook myself to this one or hook myself to that one. That's not what, I'm not competitive. And maybe that's my downfall as an artist or whatever. But it's like, I just want to make music and make art, have fun. And I want to do that with other people that want to have fun with me. I'm not competing with you. I'm not challenging you. I'm not trying to, I've had people say to me, oh no, I'm the bigger Beatle fan. I'm like, I don't doubt you, I just want to love the Beatles, it's not about that.
I mean, that's yeah.
So I don't know. That's where people get so hung up and depressed, it's because it's so hard to hold on to all those things and to keep your status. It's like you're fighting for something that doesn't really even exist. It's in your own head, and now you've got ulcers. What are you doing?
Yeah, yeah, no, we need to be kinder to ourselves in general, I think,
Yeah.
and other
Just
people,
go
but
do your stuff.
that's with being kinder to ourselves, I think, and
Yeah.
trying to ignore a lot of the shit that we've accumulated, like brush, like sweep it out the door somehow.
Yeah. Time to sweep the fallen leaves away.
Yeah, I mean, you're around young people, you teach you students. I mean, how do they deal with these types of issues about
Their issues are getting more and more because they're talking about them more and more. I mean, we all had hangups and traumas every childhood. Nobody has perfect parents because I think parents are given this children they're supposed to get, and the children come wanting different things. I don't think it ever lines up perfectly, but because they talk about every trauma now and they have a label and a name for everything, it's getting to be really prominent, and everybody's doing backflips trying to sort it out and trying to help them. And it's like, teach them how to think, teach them how to focus on what they want rather than what they don't want. My friend Kate again has a lot of young students that are crazy about piano, and they take piano lessons with her, or voice or flute, and they do this online all over the world. And sometimes the parents are like, well, he has ADHD and he's an odd kind of kid. He's not like any of his friends, and he's not like, it's like, yeah, he's like me. He's like, yeah, he's like Kate. He's an artist. It's like so many people don't recognize artists, and they make them think they have mental illness. Like when I was a kid and I heard that James Taylor put himself in a mental institution, I thought, oh, maybe I'm crazy too. And maybe that's what's going to happen. And I thought, that's ridiculous. That doesn't have any congruency at all. And then you have to suffer to be beautiful, or you have to be a starving artist. It's like, no, I could be a very wealthy artist. I could be a very successful musician. I feel successful. I have a body of work that I'm super proud of since 1970. And even if most of it isn't released yet, a lot of it is. It's like, don't teach these kids to have a million crutches before they even know how to think or walk. And they're hiding behind these labels. It's like, no, how about put a producer label on your shoulder? How about saying you're a recording engineer, you're a songwriter, you're an artist? How about stepping into what you want? Follow the good examples. There's enough bad examples. It's like people dying young at 27 because, Joplin did, or
Kurt Cobain.
Hendrix or whoever. It's like, don't follow the ones that are doing it wrong. Follow the ones that are doing it right.
So do you think that this whole question of permission, I mean, do you think younger people have an easier time with that, or not?
No, I don't think they're giving themselves permission at all. They're giving themselves labels, and they're not doing any of the work. Most of them, like you say, are on the social media, or worried about content creating when they've got nothing to say, and they're busy doing stuff that has nothing to do with, I shouldn't say that, because I was writing songs, I felt like I had a lot to say. My young songs are still good to me. But they're not practicing instruments, they're not writing poems, they're not writing songs, they're off in texting land or something, and they're not creating anything. So it's like, no wonder they're feeling a little crazy and left out, and maybe a little off center with the wrong label, because they're not doing something that's art. They're
Let me ask you a question. Are they, I mean, I'm sure it varies, but like, are they able to sit alone in a room with their own thoughts?
not really. No.
Are they able to turn off the constant stimuli?
No, I think they're addicted to
That's
the
the
stimuli.
problem. I mean,
Yes.
it's a huge problem for humanity, not only your students.
Oh, I know.
Serious
They're
problem.
not knowing how to be alone in the world, or how to occupy their own brain, and to, like Jerry Seinfeld says, tame that wild stallion. They don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. I know people, it's like, everywhere you go, whether it's a dentist's office or an airport or everywhere, there's music, there's always some music. In other words, like, you have to carve out time and space to have silence and be alone with your thoughts in this culture. And it's really hard to do.
I've noticed I can't write in a public place. I don't go to cafes and write lyrics. It would just be too distracting and crazy for me. I live in a very quiet place by myself out in the woods, and I have my own thoughts. The TV isn't on all the time. Uh, the radio isn't on. I don't even listen to music constantly because I'm creating music. I live in a very, very quiet world. The loudest thing are these guys when they bark when something happens.
Yeah, knowing oneself and getting in touch with that, deeper self is really a key to creativity, I think. And not
That's interesting.
and,
Yeah.
and living in a world that doesn't provide opportunities for that, or not only that, I mean, often to the
You got to
contrary,
create your own world.
yeah, you have to find ways to do it,
I mean, my environment is not normal. Like my students will say, well, you've heard of such and such artists, they're on the radio all the time. It's like, I don't listen to the radio. Well, when you go to the mall, it's like, I don't go to the mall. When you do this, I don't do that. Like I am very different in that way. I don't get the memos all the time about what's happening in the culture or what's going on, but the big news I hear, and the things that I need to know, I get to know. But I don't get fed from that. That kind of stuff sometimes is just like you say, too mediocre or too boring or too not deep enough conversation or not artistic enough or too negative.
Oh God, I mean, my grandson, and I
How
don't
old
think
is he?
he'll be 14 in October. When I think of what he's listening to compared to what I was listening to at his age, it just makes me want to cry. And I got him a Spotify subscription, and so for the purpose of, okay, you have all of this at your fingertips, and like, sometimes we'll like, he'll
Make suggestions.
listen to something, but like, sometimes I'll listen to something like from my youth that I haven't listened to for a long time, like the first Crosby, Stills and Nash album,
Mm.
that, right? And I'm thinking, my God, like young people like don't like there's a beauty to it that, I mean, I'm just using that as an arbitrary example. You come up with any example, but like, and I think there actually has been research that shows this, that the lyrics, not only the sound and all that, but the lyrics of music over time have become more negative. And I think, like we were saying before, it's, the media diet affects your mental health. And it's really, it's disturbing. It's disturbing that
But like you say, just like in history, there's all kinds of things to look at. Like Abraham Hicks would teach that life is a giant buffet, and you don't have to argue about what's on the buffet. Just put on your plate what you want. You don't have to say, oh, this shouldn't be in the world or this shouldn't be on the buffet. It's just everything. The world is everything.
But
and
what if,
just like your quilt, you're going to pick and choose what to put in your quilt and what to put in your art or your mind.
yes, you have to, right? But if you are, I don't know, I mean, thinking about, music and my grandson, which I think about a lot, it's not up to me. I mean, yes, he's at the smorgasbord. He has to put on his plate what he's going to put on it. But as somebody who loves him and cares about him,
I agree. I would give him my favorite stuff too.
it's like,
Sure. It's like, have you tried this? Have you tasted that?
yeah, I
You
mean,
have to broaden your tastes for food and music and everything else.
right. I mean, you grow or you die. Anyway, well, this has been a great conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
I could go, I mean, we could go on and on, but I don't know how, I mean, we've
This is good. I mean, my critters are getting a little restless here, so they're probably like, we need to go outside.
but these are all very interesting and important topics.
Well, I like your perspective on it because as a sociologist and someone who's studied psychology, and I've always loved psychology, as a writer, as an artist, as a quilt maker, as a author of books, it's like, and a lover of the Beatles. That's, pretty much my whole life. If I met a true Beatle person, they were a good person. The Beatles music just brought out the magic in people. And anytime there's been a gathering of real Beatle fans, it's a good hang, you know. So that's something we can probably enjoy on a bigger scale, is that they were still one of the biggest bands and the most loved. And so most people are good, you know.
We harness all that energy.
How what?
How do we harness the energy of Beatle fans to make the world a better place?
We all just
Or
keep
are we doing
ourselves,
that now? I mean,
we all keep our own flame burning bright, and take a rest when we don't feel like helping and we're not good, you know, and get our rest and then come back and bring our love again. If, you know, like George would say, for the whole forest to be green, each tree has to be green. But I'm not waiting for everyone to be enlightened or anything. I'm just trying to do my bit and enjoy my time, and hang with people that I can grok. And that's what this is for sure, because I always need creative company.
one thing you reminded me, I wanted to say when I was talking about gardening before, about George, like when I got super into gardening in like
Oh,
2017, I totally got it, like why he became so enraptured with gardening. And it just makes total sense after what they'd been through, what he'd been through.
and the way the world is, because he never liked stepping out of the
Yeah.
garden much. She's like, what am I doing here? You know, because he wanted to make things grow and make things better. And there's a lot of opposition sometimes if you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, there's something about working, there's a peacefulness and you know, communing with, and you have these relationships with these plants, and it's like there's no agenda, there's no drama, there's just nature, sun, sky, air, water, earth, seeds. See what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Ringo said, if you're not inspired, open your eyes, right? So we just have to keep opening our eyes and looking for what inspires us. And that's what I was doing a couple of months ago. I was like, what am I going to do? I need a hobby or something. Sometimes I'm just tired of my shtick. And I was laughing about it. And I just thought, well, I just need to talk to more creative people. And then all of a sudden it turned into this podcast thingy.
Great, it's great, and I'm so glad you reached out. I mean, it's just nice to see your smiling face and chat with you, and I'm thrilled that you're doing this. I mean, it's great.
Really?
It's good.
I still don't understand what it is or why, but it doesn't matter. It's fun.
I mean,
It doesn't have to be anything. It's just for fun.
people enjoy listening to it, and we enjoy doing it, and somebody takes away some little thing that maybe they're gonna think about or not, or whatever. I mean, you know,
We have no idea. That's not our job. Our job is to just
do the thing.
do
Exactly.
what feels natural to do, that feels good, and hope it lands somewhere. Bless it. Kiss it goodbye.
All
It's so
right.
good to
Well,
see you.
yeah, same here. And yeah, keep in touch. And thank you again for this opportunity. You know, in talking about these issues, it's helped me to clarify some of my thinking about this too. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm going to go read some more posts of yours and get re-inspired myself.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Beetle Candy. It's been
Bye-bye.
fun.
Yes.
Ciao.